I see Jake is here,
All right, you are all set.
thank you, Erin.
Sure.
And I see Cheryl is also here from Meredith College in Raleigh, North Carolina. Ooh, awesome. Um, Thanks everyone for joining us today. I am Alexandra Pickett. I'm the Director of Online Teaching here at SUNY Online. And my partner in crime is Erin Maney. And do you want to say hi?
Hi, everyone. Erin Maney from SUNY Online. I help coordinate these types of events for us. So thanks for joining us.
So we are here today to talk about strategies to support online academic integrity. So if that's what you are hoping for, you are in luck. We do these lunchtime webinars periodically on a variety of different topics. And so I am hoping to engage in some discussion with you about this topic and to present you with some information and some resources. And Erin's going to be popping some links in the chat for us as I talk. Everything that I show you today, you will have access to after the session, which is being recorded. And so all the links, you don't have to worry about where they are. You'll be able to grab them either from the chat or afterwards we'll have, we'll share out the links to everyone who is here. As you come in, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself so we can get a sense of who's in the room. I see some SUNY friends and I see some non-SUNY friends, and all are welcome, and we're very excited to have you spend your lunch with us here today. Oh my God, Teresa Pittman, are you there? That's my friend from Newfoundland.
Hi, Alex. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Teresa. Oh my goodness. Yeah, so awesome to see everybody. What a great group of people. Very, very cool. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. And Erin, maybe you can also help me keep track of the chat, and we'll leave some time at the end
Sure,
for that.
will do.
I'm going to close down these little windows so that my screen is better positioned. This is a very provocative, I think, topic, and I have a lot of thoughts about it and a lot of resources, as I said, to share with you. I want to present you with some food for thought. I think in general, to me, the way that I think about it is that cheating is a pedagogical issue, not a technological one. So applying a one-size-fits-all approach or a technology solution to a pedagogical problem kind of misses the point and the opportunity to understand this issue from the online learning and learner perspectives. I think it's complex and it requires work on everyone's part, and that includes administrators and faculty as well as students. So for me, from an instructional design perspective, rather than starting with the question, how do we prevent cheating, or even focusing on the cheating, the better question is, what exactly is it that you're trying to achieve in your instruction, and what pedagogically might the best way be to assess or to evaluate the learning given the options and limitations of the online environment. So as I said, today I'm going to provide you with an overview of some strategies and tools and resources to assist online faculty and instructional designers better understand how they can support online academic honesty and online faculty and learner success. So, as I said, I think it's really important to frame this issue positively and constructively, and to avoid unintentional perpetuation of negative assumptions and biases. I think plagiarism detection tools, and digital proctoring services are tools that can be used effectively in online teaching and learning environments, but they can also be misused unintentionally. And so I want you to think about that, and as we, go through this time together. I think using framing language is important. Words are important, and I think using framing language that focuses on promoting authentic online assessments and supporting online faculty and learner success better serves the cause of ensuring online quality and academic honesty and integrity, and that we can do this by educating people, by building awareness in both faculty and learners on effective practices, rather than focusing on fears of cheating or fanning fears, or turning to threats or consequences or privacy invasion. So I'm hoping that you will think about all these things as we go through some of the resources. We have a lot of materials to share with you, and intended for faculty and for online instructional designers and staff to promote authentic online assessments. So I'm going to go through some general tips and tools and strategies first and show you a bunch of things. And like I said, Erin is going to help you with the links, so you don't have to worry about finding these things again, and we'll share the links afterwards as well. So I have some general resources available on our online teaching, the SUNY online teaching website. This one here is the 9 principles of good practice for assessing student learning. And I just wanted to start off with this one to kind of give a broad overview description of good practices in assessing online student learning, keeping in mind that assessment is not an end in itself, but a vehicle for educational development. And that not only that assessments are intended for not only what students know, but what they can do with what they know. So the application of course concepts and theories and stuff. And I also wanted to point out number 4 here, that assessments can help us understand which students learn best under what conditions, and with that knowledge, they can improve the whole of their learning, all of their learning. And then it also helps to monitor progress towards intended goals in the spirit of continuous improvement. I just wanted to, there's 9 of these here, and you can read this at your leisure, and a bunch of little resources, additional resources off here on the right-hand side. But I just wanted to start out with those couple of thoughts as we dive into some of these resources. This one is a faculty focus special report. And if you're not familiar with faculty focus, you can Google that and sign up to receive their reports and their blog posts and so forth. It's a very good, well designed online service that provides these kinds of informational posts and reports. This one was focused on assessing online learning, and I thought it was particularly good and wanted to share it with you. And I've highlighted a couple of things here. The 4 typical mistakes, which are things like expecting a bell curve, using the wrong type of assessment, having assessments that are not valid enough, and then perhaps having multiple choice tests items that are not written as well as they could be. So this particular, it has a bunch of little articles, and each of them I think has a good point to share. So I just wanted to make sure that you could see this and that you had access to it so you could read it at your leisure. And I had highlighted some things that I thought were of interest. For example, this one talks about two levels of objectives or different kinds of assessments. So declarative objectives ask learners to remember and recall facts, and then procedural objectives ask students to apply what they know, and performance assessments assess actual or simulated performance. So this gives a kind of good overview of types of focuses for assessment, and then is suggesting some checklists and rating scales that you can use. This article here talks about creating better multiple choice tests, and they have a couple of tables here with some examples and some suggestions, which I thought was particularly good. And these suggestions about using precise language and writing good alternatives and distractors, I thought these were particularly good recommendations. And then more than multiple choice, I think is another one that I thought was good. They're all good. All of these here are good. I really like this one because it talks about mapping your assessments and the content or activities that you have the students do to the learning objectives. So this is a really good, this table too, I thought was really good to help illustrate and demonstrate, how to do that. Self-assessments and self-checks, I think, are also a really good strategy in terms of authentic online assessment. And so this article here has some pointers on that. Let's go to the next one. Oh, yeah. So this is a resource from Berkeley, and it's just a list of alternatives to traditional testing for your consideration. So, having a paper instead of a test, or a series of quizzes instead of a comprehensive high stakes test. And then it has a variety of other suggestions and options. And it was a nice list. It's not like exhaustive, an annotated research bibliography. I use that in my own instruction. Reflection papers are also really good approaches, and using a learner proposed project is also. So these were some descriptions of some really good ideas for alternatives. And we have a number of those. This is the one that I have and maintain on our online teaching website. So things like the minute paper, and a one sentence summary, and student generated test questions, those kinds of things are some other suggestions and ideas for alternatives to sort of more traditional tests. This is a collection of that I've curated of video interviews with some folks on online feedback and assessment that I think is very well done. The videos are very have high production quality, and I think are very very relevant, and from folks that are well known in our fields. There's Larry Reagan right there, and Clark Shaw Nelson, who's a former SUNY instructional designer, and other folks. So I'd invite you to check out these short videos that are some of our colleagues and friends who are talking about online feedback and assessment. Let's go to this one. Oh, I wanted to put in here some information that targets diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I found this resource about fostering and assessing equitable classroom participation. In an online classroom, interaction and engagement are key and assessed and typically assessed at higher levels than in a traditional face-to-face classroom. It's not just sort of the additional class participation. It really becomes foundational in an online teaching and learning environment, and so has the weight afforded to it accordingly. So these were some suggestions for thinking through how to have some attention to equity in terms of participation in an online course. So developing some guidelines, making sure that students very clearly know how they're going to be evaluated in terms of their participation, making sure that you're accessible and approachable to the learners, and then helping them to understand, not helping them, but understanding yourself better, some reasons why there might be non-participation in a class. And so that's kind of like questioning assumptions, your own assumptions, and making sure that you are open and not jumping to assumptions about lack of participation. And then promoting self-assessment of participation. I think it's always a very good practice to try and incorporate some self-assessment into your instruction. And so helping a student to understand their own levels of participation and giving them an opportunity to self-assess will help them understand and frame for themselves the expectations that you have for participation and how they're meeting those expectations. So yeah, a very good resource. So those were kind of the general tips and tools and strategies. I now want to focus in on rubrics that are an excellent tool that can be used in a variety of ways to assist you with more authentic ways of assessing student learning in online environments. So I've got a collection of resources here that give a good overview of rubrics. This one's from Cornell, and so it talks about, why, how it helps instructors and students, and some considerations, and then some good resources on how to get started. The main things, and I think many of the resources that I have here talk about how rubrics can help instructors to be more objective and more consistent, can be more efficient in terms of grading, and to give feedback in ways that are more effective and efficient in many ways, and to make clear the expectations so that it's really clear, how they're getting assessed and what the criteria are for those assessments. And then by looking at how you're using those rubrics, you can also help improve how you're teaching, and the results that you get from the student interaction with the rubrics. You can better understand what's working and what needs improvement. So this is a great resource. This is another one from Western Washington that gives a good overview and gives articles and resources that I thought were particularly good from a variety of sources and institutions. And then I particularly liked on this site all of these examples. So there's a bunch of disciplinary examples. There's different types of activities that have some examples. So if you have your students do blogs, here's a blog example rubric, and so forth. So papers, discussions, presentations, critical thinking, and then some tools, and then of course some citations. So I thought this was a very good resource if you're wanting to explore examples. This was another good one from UW Stout, and this had also a bunch of examples. And I think when you're designing a rubric, it really helps to look at some examples of how others have created it, what their criteria is, and what their different levels associated with each of the criteria that they have. And then this one breaks it up into discussion and e-portfolio and video and math and science. I mean, there's a ton of them here. So I thought this was a particularly good resource to explore, that you might be able to find, something to adapt to your own needs, your own instruction. I found this that talks about holistic analytical or analytic and single point rubrics, and it's just a description of these different types of rubrics. And you may have heard of holistic rubrics, and here is an example of one. And what I liked about this site was it talked about the advantage and the disadvantage. And so for a holistic rubric, this one is saying that the advantage is that it really, it takes less time to create on the part of the instructor. And then you just give a holistic score on your assignment. The main disadvantage for this is that it doesn't really provide targeted feedback to the students. So it then goes over analytic rubrics and gives an example and does the same thing, advantage and disadvantage, and then it talks about a single point rubric and does the same thing in terms of advantages and disadvantages. So I thought this would be a good resource for you to have a look at in more detail. This is a presentation from an instructor at Oakland, and they're talking here. It's a very good presentation. I isolated out this section of the presentation to show you because it listed out some authentic assessments as compared to more traditional assessments. And then it had a companion worksheet. And this really is about how to design, your content, your activities, and the associated assessments. So I thought it was a good framework to help. Your instructional designers can help you with a backwards design approach to designing your online activities, content, and assessments. And so I just wanted to share this with you so that you'd have the whole presentation as well as the worksheet and the list there. I like this one. And who is this by? Oh, Penn State. So I'm adding, I included this one because it's a rubric you could use with your students to help them understand how to evaluate information. And so this is an example of a rubric, and its purpose is to help learners understand how to evaluate sources of information. And so if you look along the left here, there's a bunch of criteria, and then it details out what to look for and what to look for in websites. So I thought this was an interesting example of a rubric that might be of interest or useful to a variety of faculty. All right, let's look at assessing asynchronous interaction. I have a number of resources for you here under this section. This is from Johns Hopkins, and it is from their Faculty Forward Academy, and they have this great video that talks about student activities and assessments. It's short, it's about 6 minutes long, and the whole site here, the whole page is kind of a roadmap for new online instructors, but this particular section talked about aligning your activities and your assessments. So again, that backwards design notion of what are your objectives, what is the content, and what are the activities, and what are the assessments, and planning that out so that there is alignment across the board. So I thought this was a really good resource to have you have access to and to check out. So this is a repository of rubrics for at the undergraduate level. And so you can actually come here and mine it and put in different filters. I filtered it out to look at undergraduate rubrics that were available. And this is just so that you can have a resource that you could go to when you're designing your rubrics to think about, what elements and what criteria and how the levels might lay out in your own course discipline and context. And so these are a variety of examples and targeting a variety of topics like participation and different, everything that you see here. There's a lot of participation, report writing, and so forth. So you can explore here and put in different criteria to see what you can find. I wanted to include my own blog rubric that I use, but the grading rubric that I use for the activity that I have my students do, which is public blogging, so that you could just see how I do it. I'm not saying that you need to do this in this exact way, but it's just one example. And I have a lot of detail here of what would constitute an excellent blog post. And then, it goes further, eliminating things from the list the further down you go in terms of the criteria. I have an interesting additional way of assessing other aspects of the blog post, which includes the subject line. So it's just an example to show you what my criteria is and how I do it. This one is another example of an asynchronous discussion participation. And so you can see here in terms of criteria, they're evaluating frequency, the initial post, follow-up posts, content, references and support, and clarity and mechanics. And then they detail out from unacceptable to excellent. And you can see how they have organized that. For this one, this is another example. Again, criteria along the left, and then levels of the levels across the top. And so critical analysis is in this one. Participation, etiquette, and quality are the criteria for this one. So this resource from Yale is talking about formative and summative assessments. And I love the examples that they're giving here of the difference between formative and summative assessments, and then some recommendations for formative assessments that I thought were particularly succinct and clear, giving clear criteria for good performance, encouraging student self-reflection, and giving students actionable feedback, as well as some others, including collecting information to improve your own instruction. And then for summative, the recommendations here are to use a rubric, to have clear questions, to assess comprehensively, and again, making expectations and parameters clear, and then a suggestion for blind grading, and then some additional recommendations there. So I thought this was quite a good overview and reference for formative and summative assessments. The next one I have is also from the same group at Yale, talking about assessments and recommendations. Um, and I love this suggestion for having students really make their thinking and their learning visible to you. And so having them explain their thinking of how they got to a particular conclusion or why they have a particular thought or assumption or idea in an online environment is a good way to be able to see how students are applying or adapting or understanding the course content and themes or theories, whatever it is that you're asking them to do in your course. So having them explain things is a really good approach. Really focusing on deeper learning and assessments that help students to go deeper on things and really implementing some of those higher order on Bloom's taxonomy, the higher order critical thinking skills and thinking about assessments that target those higher order thinking and critical thinking aspects is also a really good way to start thinking about how you would do that in an online environment and help you to kind of frame and understand the assessments that you are creating to target those deeper learning areas. Building knowledge over time, so incremental rather than too high stakes assessments during the semester, having assessments that build over time and that target the development of their knowledge as it evolves and increases over time, I think is also a really good approach. And improving the way that you do use quizzes and tests. Earlier I showed some in that faculty focus article that had some really good suggestions about how to actually create and improve multiple choice tests, and this one kind of reinforces and reiterates some of that. And then some additional things, options for assessing would be things like in-class presentations, whether that's synchronous virtual or asynchronous, recorded or something. And then obviously papers and other writing assignments are always part of the mix. So this was a pretty good list of types of assessments from that organization. Peer assessment is another tool that you can leverage in your authentic online assessment toolbox. Having students peer assess is a great way to help them understand how to apply a rubric. So if they have to apply a rubric to a colleague, a classmate, it will help them better understand how to meet those expectations in your rubric themselves in their own work. So peer evaluation and peer assessment are really good, is a really good tool. And so this is an overview of, essentially why you might want to consider peer assessment, some things to consider if you are, and then how to get started. This is from our friends at Cornell, and I think this one is too. So, if you're going to have them peer assess, you need to help them understand how to do that. So there's a process of essentially teaching them how to evaluate each other. And so this was a great resource that kind of focused on that and gave a bunch of suggestions for planning peer review and some keys to success there and things to do before the first review session and then during and after, and then some examples of peer review type activities, and then some tools, and of course the references. So I thought that was really excellent to not forget that if you're going to use peer assessment, you need to teach the learners how to actually do that. Self-assessment is another good tool to have in your authentic online assessment toolkit, helping students to self-assess and use the tools in the LMS to help you do. This is where the quiz tool comes in handy, so that you can help the student have a tool to help them understand if they've understood your reading, for example, or if they have really understood some presentation that you may have given or something that you have asked them to watch, or read. So this gives a good overview of why and considerations and getting started with self-assessments. Let's look. Oh, so I'm assuming that in this group of 60 people that we have here today, that there are folks who have some experience with online teaching and learning, and who may have strategies and practices that they have lots of experience with, or maybe unique or innovative, or that they would be willing to share. And so I wanted to put this repository in the mix, so that if you do have something you would like to share with other SUNY and non-SUNY colleagues, you could submit your assessment strategy here. It's a repository that a group here at SUNY has created, and the cool thing is it breaks things down into a variety of types of assessments. And so you can come and showcase some things that you may have used yourself, or that you, if you're an instructional designer, that you've seen your faculty implement, and submit them to this repository so that we can all benefit and share some of the unique and innovative ways that folks are assessing instruction. And I think this is not unique just to online, but certainly there is a thread of it that is targeting online innovations in assessment. All right.
Alex, I just want to give you your 8-minute warning.
Oh, thank you.
Sure.
So thank you. So assessing synchronous interaction is the next one, and we'll go through this one. This is an example of a synchronous participation rubric that looks at participation, contributions, and timeliness. So just an example to take a look at if you're doing any synchronous remote teaching, or live online synchronous instruction. This is another one that looks at the learner interaction, communication, the content, and the structure and organization, so that you can take a look at that and see if that applies to you. Here's another one that I think looks at attendance, participation, disposition, preparation, and engagement. So another model for a rubric for targeting synchronous online interaction. And then this resource here is both for online asynchronous and synchronous, and it has a variety of examples. Again, another tool where you can look at a variety of different examples, and for different types of activities as well, that I thought was particularly good. And now this is the last category of resources and tools and tips that I have for you. And it's really focused on supporting academic honesty. And so there's a bunch of articles that I wanted to share with you, some which may be provocative, some which may, cause you to go, and I just wanted to share with you a variety of thoughts on this issue, and to just have you think about it and look at a variety of types of discussion that is happening out there in the world online, talking about various issues around assessing students online. Here's an article from the Journal of Online Learning that examines the effects of proctoring. Here are some suggestions and tips that we have collected to help avoid plagiarism and you know, just some suggestions. And I've highlighted things like designing unique types of assessments, providing resources to make sure that, you know, the learners understand how to cite and not making assumptions that learners know how to paraphrase and cite correctly, and making sure that there's links and resources, obviously depending on the level of your students, to campus academic resources that might help them improve some of those skills. Focusing on the process of writing and requiring iteration. These are all good suggestions. Another faculty focus article here that we've talked you know, previously here about focusing on higher order thinking, varying your types of questions, reminding students about you know, policies, and actually this one is suggesting having students sign an academic integrity contract. And some campuses or schools or departments or programs may have some of that embedded into the practices for the learners. I really like these small scalable changes for improving academic integrity. This is an Inside Higher Ed article that I wanted to share with you just for these 10 things. It reiterates some of the things we've already talked about in some of the previous articles, but it had a really nice like top 10 list there that I thought would be helpful to review. And this is an article focusing in on talking about academic integrity not being plagiarism, and it had a bunch of resources and information that I thought would be helpful. And then this I thought was really, really interesting about perceptions. This is also Inside Higher Ed, and student perceptions about certain behaviors in online activities. And so I'll let you take a look at this. It's an extensive article that really goes through you know, understanding from the student's perspective, which I thought was particularly eye-opening when you look at some of these statistics. And you can take a look at this at your leisure. The last thing I wanted to share with you was this resource, which I do a whole session on, so I'm not going to go through it, you know, one thing at a time, but I just wanted to share it with you so that you could take a look at it about how you can support your online learners' success and things that you can do in your online or blended courses to improve online learner success, and some of the theory behind it, which involves supporting sense of student self-efficacy and self-regulated learning strategies. And so just a little bit of the theory behind some of this, and then kind of framing it from the student perspective, and really looking at what successful online learners do to be successful, and what strategies they employ, and what faculty can do to support these particular strategies. This one is goal setting and planning, and then so it lists, and each of these is set up the same way. So it has sort of, you know, strategies and what faculty can do. So I'll let you take a look at that at your leisure as well. So that is what I have for you today. And how are we doing in terms of questions, Erin?
So I don't see too many particular questions, but I know that there are some comments. Vicki loves using rubrics and uses it as a tool when developing an assignment. And I just lost it. Oh, there it is. Maria mentioned that she's been reviewing some of the issues with online software like Respondus. Some of these softwares actually, they collect data on students. So that is also a concern. So really just seeing comments. So if anyone has a question, you can unmute your mic, you can type in the chat. Lots of folks appreciative about a curated list of resources that they can come back to. So yes, absolutely. We'll post that along with the recording too on the site that I shared.
Good. So if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to talk. I can keep talking a little bit. I want to make sure to invite you all to the SUNY Online Summit, which is coming up on February 28th. And it's free and virtual. So so Jamie, you could be walking and listening to the presentations. It's really going to be so much fun and such an amazing group of both SUNY and non-SUNY folks. And we have such a great program lined up. I hope that you will join us. And Tammy, you look like you're at the beach. I'm jealous. Are you really actually at the beach?
I'm not at the beach, but we have a place in Cape Coral, Florida. So yeah, we finally are out of the 30s and 40s at night and the 50s and 60s during the day, and today's 80. So
Oh my God, I want to come visit.
I thought maybe Tammy was tricking us with a virtual background wearing her sunglasses.
No, that looks real to me.
no,
That looks
this is my office.
Oh.
It gets those endorphins going, so I probably grade a lot nicer when I sit out here and do it.
That's awesome.
Alex, I see a question from Jonathan in the chat. Just wondering if you had any comment on annotation software such as Perusal.
Annotation software. I'm not familiar with Perusal, but I use a tool called Digo, and the annotate, and maybe since I don't know what Perusal is, I'll just explain. Digo allows me to, all the highlighted text on the resources I was showing, that was done with a tool called Digo. And it really is a social bookmarking tool that has some additional features and functionality. And one of them is highlighting and annotation. And so with your highlights and with your annotation, you can attach an annotation to it, or it can be a free floating annotation on any public website or PDF. And I have used it for years and years and years. And I use it in my online instruction to provide feedback to students on their public blog posts, for example, and anything that they publicly post, which they do a lot of in my course. And I also have the students use it. So we create an annotated bibliography of resources. Everything that the students use in discussion or anywhere in the course, they have to bookmark in Digo, and then they also have to annotate. So I don't know about Perusal. Let's see. Perusal places the text assignments online and allows or requires students to post comments and respond to each other. Yeah, so since I haven't used it, I can't really comment, but I have used an annotation software. There's another one called Hypothesis that is similar, and but I haven't used that one either. I just love Digo so much. It has so many features and functionality. It's a tool that's been around for a long time. Perusal similar to Hypothesis. Yeah, so Digo is also similar to Hypothesis, so they may be similar. So all those tools are super cool to explore, because they really allow you to, as an instructor, it allows me to be more efficient and more effective in giving feedback, because I can just do it right on the web page, for example. And then what I love is that the students can do it too. So I ask them to do the same thing, and then that is collected outside of the LMS, so that these annotations and these resources and bookmarks persist beyond the end of the term for the students outside of the context of the course. So that's not lost when they lose access to the course. So yeah, I'm curious about Perusal. I'll have to go check it out. Anyone else? Any questions or comments or anything? I want to thank you all so much for, spending your lunchtime with me and Aaron, and for chatting about this, and being open to, thinking about and your own instruction and how you assess your students. And hopefully some of these resources will be able to help you if you want to, you know, if you've been using rubrics for a long time, hopefully, you can get something out of some of the resources that we shared. And if you've never used them, hopefully you can have some foundation for giving it a try.